One thing that I've realized with being on Letterboxd, I would say I'm pretty substantially into film. That's nothing. There is a user called Punk, PUNQ, who has watched over 39,000 films, over 20,000 feature films. Currently, this year, they've seen 404 films. I haven't even seen half of that in 1 year alone. Look at this person's rating bell curve and tell me that this isn't insane. Without going that extreme, there's always been this nudging sense that I can push myself to watch more films. I think that's natural. I think if you love films as much as I do, if you love something, you want to do it more and more, right? I think numbers are important. I think seeing more is obviously helpful. But then there's also a question of volume versus quality, discovery. These are all things that we need to balance when wanting to discover new movies, when wanting to push ourselves to explore all the different kinds of films that there may be. And also, what's the point of proclaiming that you love films if you're really not going to bother seeing the extent of what films can be? This is definitely not me saying you need to reach a certain threshold to be able to proclaim that you love films, but there's no harm in being a little more curious about what there is to watch. So, my personal goal for this year is 200 films. That will be the most that I've ever watched in 1 year. I believe my previous record was about 190, 180 something. If I watch about 17 a month, I'll hit this goal. However, I think, as I was saying before, I need to balance watching versus actually discovering. How can I really be ambitious in what I watch? How can I expand my understanding of what there is to watch? And with Letterboxd lists and challenges, they're all well and good. Some of them feel a little unachievable, and that's gonna base solely on your day-to-day lives. Like, do you have people who depend on your care? Do you have time? Do you work a full-time job? You know, we can't all be watching 10 films a day. We have lives, we have jobs, you know. We have time also that needs to be spent doing other things, reading, cooking, cleaning. So for myself, I wanted to find a balance, right? What is a middle ground for me that will push me to go beyond what I'm already watching and feel like a challenge, but won't also break my brain? So it really boils down to this. Each month, there are 10 movies, and there are 3 specific changeable metrics that are going to change each month. That may be language, it might be director, it might be genre, it could be a list by a Letterboxd user. But the main point of these 3 parameters is to give you some guidance into how you're going to select a film to watch. Now, 10 films a month feels doable, but there is some leeway here, and we'll get onto that in a bit. The 3 parameters will be broken down typically in this fashion: 4 films in one, 3 films in one, 3 films in another. So let's look at how this shaped out for February. I wanted to watch 4 films from the top 250 documentaries list on Letterboxd. I wanted to watch 3 films directed by David Lynch, RIP, and I wanted to watch 3 films where the primary language was Mandarin. There was a little bit of trial and error in the amount of films that I thought would be doable within a month. Now with February, I did actually hit that 10 film criteria. So at the moment, it's going to stay as 10 films because it's achievable for me in my lifestyle. However, there is leeway to this. Now with March, I had obviously a very similar criteria still. I had 4 films from the Sight and Sound's Greatest Films of All Time list. I had 3 films from a list called Feeling Lost in Your 20s by user Daydreaming on Letterboxd. And I had 3 films where the primary language was Danish. Now, I did hit this criteria, but I watched 9 movies. How is that possible? Well, Portrait of a Lady on Fire is on the Sight and Sound list, but it's also in the Feeling Lost in Your 20s list. Now, I don't necessarily see this as cheating either. I'm still hitting my criteria, but I wanted to give some leeway where if you wanted to watch 7 or 8 films instead of 10 in a month, there will be certain combinations where I'm more rewarding myself for finding that film that does overlap, if that makes sense. But if you're making your own criteria, for example, I think it is important for you to find that overlap, especially because it is aiding that point of discoverability. In a way, you're narrowing yourself further by really finding a film that hits 2 out of the 3, or maybe even 3 out of the 3 parameters that I've set. Now, you can click off this video now and do this yourself. Go and make your own challenge with this. This is a template more than anything. If you want to do your own type of film criteria and not follow my parameters, please do. And maybe there are some blind spots that you're a little bit anxious about and you want to push yourself in that direction rather than the ones that I'm setting. If you want to take this structure and filter it to your own needs, please don't listen to me. At the end of the day, it's what you want to get out of this. If you want to watch more films, make it a 20 film criteria. If you want to watch less films, make it a 5 film criteria. There are so many different ways you can play around with this to suit your own lifestyle and your own needs. As long as you feel like you're discovering what needs to be discovered for yourself, then my job is done. Now that I've explained a little bit about this structure, I wanted to go through what I actually did watch in March. So one piece of advice, if you are going to do this yourself, I would recommend maybe even doing some double film days, maybe even some triple film days if you really want to, hit a big chunk of these films at once. Don't do what I did and start on the 7th of the month. It feels, like you have plenty of time left. No, on the 7th, I watched Perfect Blue. It feels quite ahead of its time for what it's saying about internet culture, fandom, but really the strength of Perfect Blue is how potent the visual imagery is, how horrifying it can be. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend starting with a film this rough to watch off the bat, but that's how it turned out. On the 14th, I watched Modern Times. Now, I'm still quite new to Chaplin's filmography. Prior to this, I'd only seen The Kid. I decided it was time to go back into his filmography, and luckily it landed on the Sight and Sound list too. This certainly won't be the last I'm watching of Chaplin as well. The guy is just a master of slapstick, and there are films like The Great Dictator, Gold Rush that I still haven't seen and will need to see as a result of this. Now, a couple days later, on the 16th, I watched my favorite film of March's criteria, and this was Only Yesterday. Subtle plug to the video I just made talking about Only Yesterday. It's beautiful, it's wholesome, it's heartwarming. Such an underrated Studio Ghibli film. I'm not going to talk about it anymore because you can either watch my video on it or you can watch it yourself. In fact, just go and see it. Just watch it. It's so beautiful. Now, on the 20th, I watched a film by the same director, just on a different list. Grave of the Fireflies is in the Sight and Sound list. And of course, they're both Studio Ghibli films. However, they are so tonally different. You definitely got to be in the right headspace to watch this one. I think it's truly harrowing. There is some relief throughout where you see the moments of kinship between these two siblings. It really amplifies the horror of war. And to do that with an animated film is no easy feat. Moving on to something a little bit lighter, on the 25th, I watched Some Like It Hot. Now, Marilyn Monroe is, again, a blind spot for me. Prior, I had only really seen her in All About Eve, and from casting my mind back, she's not in it that much. So Some Like It Hot is really my first foray into her work as an actress, and it won't be my last, for sure. She's incredible in this. Everyone's incredible. Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon, they are just so funny. In a way, it's really timeless because of how well written it is, how good the slapstick comedy is. For a film about cross-dressing, I wouldn't really say it's aged poorly either. And I think if you want to watch older comedy films, this is such a great entry point as well. Now, on the 28th, I watched The Hunt. This was the first Danish film to tick off the criteria in March. I've got really mixed feelings about the way this film handles certain elements. It is about a very serious allegation, which is false. I found this film's understanding of how something like this would go about maybe a little too cynical, maybe a little unbelievable at times. However, one thing I will say is that it's already starting to age better in my mind than when I first watched it. From the perspective of the filmmaking alone, it is pretty fundamentally great. There are just some things I'm struggling to digest about it fully. Next up, on the 29th, I watched Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Glaring blind spot for me. It's insane that I haven't seen this film before. But what's even more insane is Adele Haenel not even getting nominated for Best Actress. This film didn't really get any substantial awards recognition that awards season, and it's absolutely infuriating because the performances here, the craft, the cinematography, it's so incredible. It's such an incredible piece on the power of image of a time and place. It's very ghostly in parts too. It just makes the core romance of the film all that more powerful and emotionally sincere as well. I would highly recommend you watch this film if you haven't already. Next up, we had Speak No Evil. This was probably my least favorite of last month. There are some interesting themes and moments. Some of the performances are quite good. Some scenes are set up to be quite uncomfortable, but they're set up quite cleverly. It's just really the last 5-10 minutes of the film that screwed this entire thing over for me. I would say I have a pretty high tolerance for disturbing moments in movies, but the way that this specific scene was handled, and I think this film wants to have a conversation about masculinity, but I'm not really sure it knows how. And by the time that this specific scene was over, I just realized that this film was being talked about because it has one extremely disturbing moment. You know, when a film really doesn't stick the landing, I feel like Speak No Evil is that movie for me. If you're especially sensitive to films about child abuse or just gore in general, obviously don't watch this film. However, we did end on a really good high note, again in the Danish film category with Flea. There's been a lot of animated films this month, I've realized. There's actually been 4. All of them have been so great, and Flea is no exception. This animation documentary hybrid focuses on Amin. He is a refugee from Afghanistan. The film spends a lot of time looking back at his childhood, fleeing the Taliban, the insane struggles and challenges that refugees face. Amin is also gay as well, and the film touches a lot on his sexuality, wanting to be accepted, wanting a sense of home for the first time. It's just such an incredible film. As an added bonus, it's just so beautifully animated too. There's of course a lot of really emotionally devastating moments, but there are some really optimistic, heartwarming scenes as well. I also think it's just a really important film to watch, getting this experience and real life human story told. If you live in the UK, it's on BBC iPlayer, so you can literally watch it for free if you have a TV license. Please go watch Flea. That was March. Those were the 9 films I watched. Portrait of a Lady on Fire was on 2 lists, so I watched 9 films instead of 10 this month. Now, I'm going to be making these videos where I catch up with what I watched over the previous month, but with every criteria that I add, obviously there's going to be a little bit of time between me setting the criteria themselves and me uploading these videos. Now, you can follow along to this criteria at your own pace. Please just use it as a template. However, if you'd like to follow along to April's specific criteria, I will link it down below. Give yourself about a month to watch it. It feels good for me, but if you want to give yourself less time, more time, it's up to you. Now, as I say, if you want to follow April, I'll leave the link to the sample watch list down below. This month, I'm watching 4 films that have won the Cannes Palme d'Or, 3 films from director John Waters, and 3 films in the list Nature by Letterboxd user Alice Krichin. Thank you so much for watching this far into the video. If you've gotten this far, thank you so much. I really hope that you enjoy doing these challenges, and please don't feel any significant pressure to complete them. As long as you've watched some new films, that's really the best thing at the end of the day. This is supposed to be a fun challenge, so if you ever feel like you're stressing about watching all of these films, then take a step back, reevaluate, do it at your own pace. I really can't wait to talk about April's films next month. Again, thank you so much for watching. I will see you there.